And so next, it's my pleasure to introduce in the before times, my office neighbor, but now we're at home, Elyse Robertson, who works in the Office of Safe and Supportive Schools on a number of topics, who will be talking to us today about some very important issues. Elyse.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I do miss sitting next to you, and yeah, I appreciate the introduction. I am so thankful that you all invited me to be a part of your agenda today. As Carlette said, or not Carlette, Nicole. I work with both Carlette and Nicole in our Office of Safe and Supportive Schools at the Department of Education. I apologize for not having a professional background like Nicole. I was feverishly trying to set one up, but I was late to the game. So we'll just have my back wall for our time together today. But like Nicole said, I'm happy to be joining you all today because our office wanted to put on your radar an important topic, the topic of preventing and supporting young girls and women who've been impacted by female genital mutilation, or otherwise known as FGM. I know that FGM, along with other topics of health and safety and trauma, can sometimes be difficult, but it's nonetheless important, and particularly in the work that you all do to improve school climate, to help make sure that we're doing all that we can to make sure that all of our students, especially our female students, feel safe and are supported at school. On the slide is my contact information. If you have, of course, any questions or comments or suggestions for possible technical assistance resources around this subject, or also information that maybe your state or school district is doing around kind of awareness or knowledge or training around FGM. Certainly that's information that I and my colleagues here would be interested in learning more about. I'll speak a little bit more on that later, but regardless, wanted to provide my contact information up front for all of you. So we can move to the next slide. Thank you. So our time is very brief today, but I wanted to share information on the newly passed Strengthening the Opposition to Female Genital Mutilation Act of 2020, or the Stop FGM Act for short. And then we'll discuss the department's new role in joining other federal agencies and submitting an annual report to Congress. That's a requirement of the new Stop FGM Act. And then I just found a few FGM related resources to help build your knowledge and possible resources if you're unfamiliar of the practice. And then if we have some time for questions, certainly we can open up to that. I do want to preface on the onset that I'm not an expert in this area, but I'm certainly willing and happy to do some research if there is any question or comment that I can't respond to during our time today. So we can move to the next slide. So the Stop FGM Act, or HR 6100, was signed into law on January 5th, 2021. I provided a hyperlink to the copy of the act. The law itself is actually quite short. It's only about 4 pages long. So it's, a pretty brief and quick read compared to other legislation. For those that aren't familiar with the practice of FGM, the World Health Organization defines the practice as the intentional removal of either all or part of the external female genitalia for non-medical reasons. Now, FGM sometimes is also known as FGMC. Sometimes there's an added cutting to the title, but for our purposes today, I'll just be, referring to utilizing FGM. And typically the practice is performed on girls usually between, ages from infancy to 18 years of age, but it's typically between years 6 through 15. is what I've read. And then according to UNICEF, the practice is global in scope, affecting about 200 million women and girls alive today. Though kind of, I think a lot of us think FGM is international, primarily North, West, Africa, Middle East. It's cross geographical, it's cross religion, socioeconomic groups, but does occur domestically as well. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimate that there are about more than 500,000 women and girls living in the US today that are either at risk or who have undergone the practice today. And the most prevalent areas in the US that I recently was in a working group that they shared that have the kind of the largest identified pockets are, no surprises, I think New York City and Newark, New Jersey, actually the Washington, DC, Northern Virginia and Maryland area was second highest. And then Minneapolis, St. Paul over to Madison, Wisconsin, had the third kind of highest prevalence, and then all the way across to Los Angeles and Long Beach, California. So like I said, the practice is, not only global, but a domestic issue as well. And I don't have it on the slide, but the Stop FGM Act is actually not the first law to address FGM in the US. The practice has been unlawful in the US since going back to 1996. And I just discovered this not too long ago, so I wasn't able to put it in my PowerPoint before sending over, but there's a website called equalitynow.org, which I found, very beneficial. It outlines the kind of the history of US laws and policies against FGM. But then it also goes into even further detail, highlighting individual state laws that have, legislation in place regarding FGM. So if you'd like to look up your own state's, FGM law, I would suggest typing in Equality Now FGM in the US into Google. It was the first one that popped up for me. Hopefully it would be the same for you. But currently there are only 39 states that have state laws against the practice of FGM. So we can move to the next slide. So I won't go too terribly into detail about the legislation that is specified in the Stop FGM Act, but outside of our realm, on the prosecution side, the law definitely expands. It has important provisions on increasing criminal penalties for those involved in FGM on a minor, those under the age of 18. Some are highlighted on the slide just for your awareness. So we can move to the next slide. And then the law also provides an expansive definition of FGM, again, for mainly criminal purposes and kind of more the prosecution side. But what I found really interesting was the second bullet that within the Stop FGM Act, that the law prohibits as a legal defense the prosecution for such crimes, the assertion by a defendant that FGM is required as a matter of religion, custom, tradition, or ritual, which is kind of typically a rationale or a reason for the practice being performed on females. And then the third bullet is really why our office wanted to touch base with you all, which is our new annual reporting requirement to Congress. So if we can move to the next slide, I'll dive a little bit more into detail about that reporting requirement. So the Stop FGM Act contains a reporting requirement for a few federal agencies: Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Homeland Security, Department of State, and Department of Education, our agency, all to be coordinated through the Attorney General's office to submit a report to Congress that includes at least the following information, so the bullets on the slide. Now, currently, the first bullet is about collecting data and information. In the Department of Education, we don't collect data, on the number of women and girls in the US that are, impacted by FGM. However, we are eager to, to strengthen and, do more work with our local, state, and then school level partners on, acknowledging the work that is already being done in communities and states to highlight those activities, but then also to do more on our end to provide more targeted technical assistance and support for you all and our school level partners to become more familiar and knowledgeable about this practice. So like I said, we wanted to mainly put this on your radar because this is new. Certainly through coordination with Nicole and Carlette, I'll be in contact to hopefully hear from you all on any activities and policies that are being done in your local communities regarding this. Because this is an annual report and a requirement, I'll be working towards the end of the year, November to December, to kind of put together the Department of Education's response, particularly along these 3 bullets. So probably, there might be an email reminder for you all around that time as well, if you do have any information to share. And I know we're tight on time and I hate to rush through, but I just want to quickly go over some resources that I identified for you all so we can hop over to the next slide. So currently through our National Center for Safe Supporting Learning Environments, or NESLE, hopefully this TA center is not terribly new to you all, but if it is, it's one of the centers out that's funded from our Office of Safe and Supportive Schools. But there are currently 2 resources already on the website. And I'm not endorsing these, I'm not promoting these, I'm just putting them out there for your awareness. But the first resource listed the FGMC in the United States and how educators can help fact sheet was actually developed pretty recently in September of 2020 that has really targeted information specific to school personnel, administrators, teachers on specific roles and responsibilities that school personnel have in supporting students who may be at risk of or who have already had FGM take place. And then we can pop over to the next slide. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I have provided the hyperlinks on the slide for you all to reference later, but the list on the slide are just some of the major federal agencies that have a variety of information already developed that you all can just take and share with your partners on just building awareness and becoming more knowledgeable about FGM practices in the United States. There's fact sheets already developed in a variety of languages. There's also some agencies have hotline numbers where individuals can call to learn more, but also to use the hotline if need be to report information about someone who's either performing FGM in the US, or if they know of a minor or a family who's at risk of having the practice performed either within the US or outside of the US as well. And then the last, you'll notice the United Nations I've added on the slide is not a federal agency. That's okay. The UN is not a federal agency, of course, but they're a great international partner, and I wanted to include them because they have a wealth of information on FGM and other women's health issues, but primarily their information is on a global scale. But regardless, the content is really spot on. But also they do host an International Day of Zero Tolerance to help, again, be that bridge to help keep this practice on a global radar. The day is already passed. It's celebrated or highlighted on January 6th. But typically the hashtag, which I've included on the slide, and FGM is used. So if you're interested and on the social media outlets, and if you want to look up and utilize that hashtag just to see what new information resources were shared, I certainly suggest that as well. So like I said, I know that we were short on time. We can move to the next slide. I don't even know if we have time for questions. I'm looking at the time now, but I truly appreciate the time to come and speak, to put this on your radar. I know this was maybe a little bit of information overload if you're not, again, too familiar with the practice of FGM. But through Carla and Nicole, certainly I'll be in touch. Again, if you have any questions or information specific, I'm happy to take those as well. But mainly, we really want to better support our stakeholders around this issue. So if within your spheres of influence, if you come across or have ideas of ways that targeted support and resources from our office could be of benefit, we're certainly open to hearing that as well, so that we can do more to support you all and your counterparts. So thank you so much. That was a bit of a motor mouth, but I hope I wasn't too delayed in the time.